Mbeke means Sunday born.
Sunday born, okay.
And the people in the Caribbean come from Africa. So the majority of the people in the island where my family come from, which is Jamaica, I was not born in Africa. Africa was born in me, and I very much am from that group. I'm from that tribe. I connect in a way that I can't always explain. Success is about peace. It's about waking up in the morning and having that heart that is still and not one that's pounding because you have to get somewhere, you have to do something, you have to meet somebody else's drumbeat. It's about having contentment.
How to Live, Work and Thrive Abroad. Guys, this is the book. Which year did you write this book?
You know, as with all professions, people have a stereotype of what a photographer should look like. And I didn't look like that stereotype. And the way you see me dressed today might be the same way that I would turn up for a photography shoot.
Okay.
I've done conferences. I did a conference many years ago and my son wouldn't settle. So I put him on my back and carried on doing the photography.
Mbeke, I know you've worked with reputable organizations like the United Nations, Channel 4 Television.
Yes.
What did you do there?
I was actually coaching one of their senior leaders.
Wow.
So I wear a professional hat as a coach.
Okay.
Often I coach people within education. I've coached people within the media sector as well. And coaching is one of those, I think it's almost like an unsung hero.
Bringing you so much light from the interaction with our guest Mbeke. Sit back as we get to know more about the life and journey of a life coach, photographer, writer, educator, and a woman who is so much more in her own right.
So guys, I'm delighted to have Mbeke in person to grace my studio 88 Live. I consider it as a privilege and a pleasure to have you with us. But before we start, I do have a game.
Okay.
Are you ready for it?
Yes.
It's called the Ditch It or Keep It.
Ditch it or keep it. Okay.
So I'll be giving you two scenarios. Which one will you ditch and which one will you keep?
Okay.
Summer in London or rainy season in Ghana?
Oh, summer in London. Ditch the rainy season in Ghana.
Okay. A noisy but short bus trip home or a peaceful but long train ride home?
Ooh, that's an interesting one. A noisy but short
bus trip home or a peaceful but long train ride home?
Oh, the long train ride. I can deal with that. Yeah. Ditch the noisy bus.
Okay. A photo exhibition experience or a TED talk session with young graduates?
A
TED talk
or a photo exhibition
experience.
I'd go for the TED talk with the young graduate.
Okay.
I love to hear what young people are saying. Yeah.
Okay. I know you're into photography, of which we will delve more in our conversation. A Canon camera or a Nikon camera?
Oh, Canon.
Canon.
And I'm a Canon.
Okay. A sponsored glamorous wedding or a solemn wedding?
A solemn wedding.
The glamorous is being sponsored. And a solemn wedding.
I think I would go for the glamorous sponsored.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Thank you very much. As I said, Mbeke, I mean, the very first day I heard your name, I was asking myself, is this lady from Africa? And in our conversation, I got to know that you are from the Caribbean.
Yes.
And what does Mbeke mean?
Mbeke means Sunday born.
Sunday born, okay.
And the people in the Caribbean come from Africa. So the majority of the people in the island where my family come from, which is Jamaica, were unfortunately enslaved people taken from Africa. But the majority of Jamaicans are Africans. Yeah.
I'm particularly intrigued about how connected you feel about Africa. What makes you connect so well with the continent of Africa?
It's innate. It's very, very deep. You know, there is the saying of Kwame Nkrumah. I was not born in Africa. Africa was born in me, and I very much am from that group. I'm from that tribe. I connect in a way that I can't always explain, but I know the connection, and I feel it, and I live it. Yeah.
How does it feel to be a black successful woman living in the UK? For me, I think over the years, successful has been redefined to me as having a peaceful life.
Yes.
To me,
Yeah.
as a successful person, you need to have a peaceful life. How does it feel to be a black successful woman living in the UK? I know you're successful.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's so interesting that you say that, and the idea of success is something that I think over the years has changed, not just for me, but for lots of other people. So there is a point where success is all about material things.
Yeah.
And so it's about having the house, it's about having, not even the house, the houses, about having the cars, it's about having the material things that the external world values. But I think where you landed is where I am. Yeah. Success is about peace. It's about waking up in the morning and having that heart that is still and not one that's pounding because you have to get somewhere, you have to do something, you have to meet somebody else's drumbeat. It's about having contentment. It's about having food that you want to eat as opposed to food that people tell you should eat. It's about being able to show up in a way that reflects who you are. It's about being around people who make your heart sing. And I think Maya Angelou said that, but it is a contentment that you have often after years of going after these other things and even achieving them, and then finding a place that is joy and peace.
Okay. Mbeke, you have lived in Africa, Ghana, Cameroon, Malaysia, and Jamaica. What were some of the fundamental changes you made specifically in the area of education? I know you are big on education, and you do have a book. Can I borrow this book?
Yes.
It's How to Live, Work, and Thrive Abroad. Guys, this is the book. Which year did you write this book? I know you're a writer as well.
Yes. So that book was published in 2023.
Okay.
And it was written over a period between 2021 and 2022, finally published in 2023. And what adjustments did I have to make? Interestingly, Malaysia and Ghana are connected because they both received their independence in the same year.
Yeah.
They're both previously colonized by the British. Yeah. They both have an education system which is left over from that colonization. And what that education system means in most parts, both in the private sector and in the public sector, is that students are succumb to long periods of talk from the teacher and long periods of listening from themselves, very little interaction, very little critical analysis is developed. And so the colonial education systems continue.
That's in the theological way of...
Not just the theology, but the thinking behind education was not about creating critical thinkers. It was not about creating people who challenged the system. It was about creating people who listened and did as they were told. And so you have a lot of that. And so in both spaces when I've worked, part of the input that I've been able to bring is to get people to start thinking about doing things in a different way. In 2024, and when I've worked overseas, a teacher can walk into a classroom and if it's about information, the child knows more than the teacher. The internet has allowed that. So there's been a shift. If a child is really interested in chemistry, they'll walk into a chemistry class knowing more than the teacher in terms of information. So what role does the teacher play now? The teacher is no longer there to give the information. The child already has that. So the teacher has to come with something different. They have to facilitate learning. They have to teach the students how to be circumspect. when you do a Google search and it brings you 20,000 results, which of those do you select? How do you know what's worthy of your attention at any student level? So you have to teach students different skills. You're teaching students how to be critical thinkers, not to just be consumers of information. So where there have been the colonizers' legacy of education, it's about changing that. It's about bringing another import. It's about developing minds in a different way.
Yeah. Mbeke, I mean, you have worked outside the UK.
Yes.
At which year did you decide to move out of UK to go abroad? And what were some of the challenges that you did face as an expat?
Okay, so the first thing about leaving the UK was that my first experience abroad was as a volunteer.
Okay.
And I still encourage people now when I meet them. I have a mentee that I'm working with, and I encourage my mentees to work abroad, to do voluntary work.
Okay.
So my first station was in Cameroon.
Okay.
I was there for 3 months, and I worked alongside a group of opticians and optometrists, and we moved around Cameroon, stationing ourselves at different camps where eye tests were carried out. And it was such an amazing opportunity to be outside of the UK, to experience Cameroon. And Cameroon is a place that not a lot of people go to. It's not popular like Ghana or Nigeria, but it has such a wealth of culture and tradition that you can experience. So that was the first opportunity, and that came about because I was literally doing an office job that I was bored of. And many of us have been there. You're doing a job just to pay the bills, and the advert was in the Guardian newspaper, volunteers required for Cameroon. And I said, well, why not? Let me apply. I applied. I had to do a fitness test. Fortunately, fitness has always been something that I have prioritized. So we had to walk, and it was useful to know that, because once we were in Cameroon, some days we were walking for 7 hours between one village and the next, carrying a rucksack. And so the opportunity to be in Cameroon was through being a volunteer. And then after that, I applied for roles where I was stationed on contracts. So I worked in Ghana within the education system, worked in Malaysia within the education system, and worked in Dubai as a school inspector.
Wow, that's great. I know you're into photography, right?
Yeah.
And last year I was doing my photo shoots.
Yes.
So I walked into a studio and the lady came to call me. Are you the photographer? And I was like, Fifi, better respect yourself. So, I mean, that was the amazing photo shoot I ever had.
Yes.
Working with a woman who is a photographer.
Yeah.
Back in those days, right, how did people feel you telling them you're a photographer?
Do you know, it's interesting that not that much has changed.
Okay.
So even recently, somebody was sharing statistics with me around sports photography. And even though a lot of women participate in the Olympics and many of the sports activities, the national activities, the number of photographers in sports photography, I think, is less than 5% female photographers. Back then, there were a few of us who were photographers. Many of us did it as a side hustle. It wasn't mainstream because we were not recognized at that point enough to be able to earn a living from it. Sharon Wallace at the time was a photographer with the Voice newspaper, and she still does a lot of photography. And it's always great to see her, because if you go out, you'll still see her doing her work. But people, you know, as with all professions, people have a stereotype of what a photographer should look like. And I didn't look like that stereotype. And the way you see me dressed today might be the same way that I would turn up for a photography shoot. I've done conferences. I did a conference many years ago, and my son wouldn't settle. So I put him on my back and carried on doing the photography, because I couldn't obviously hold him. And he went back to sleep. And you know, the stereotype that people have of a photographer, of lots of professions, actually doesn't include women. But in most professions, even if the percentage is tiny, women are there. We are there.
And let's talk about your works. I've seen your works in some stations here in London, and I was like, wow, can you throw more light about some of your works that you've done in terms of photography?
Okay, so this year has been a pretty incredible year for my photography. So in December, I was part of a 23 artist program that was showcased in the Beanie Museum in Canterbury. Okay. It's 23 Kent artists, and it was photography, painting, sculpture, a massive range. And it was all about storytelling. And so it was curated by a group called Kent Creatives. And what they did was they had a QR code under every image with a story and in the voice of the artist. And so the curators were very clear that every time you see a piece of art, there's a story behind it.
Yeah.
And usually you go into a gallery and you look around blindly, just admiring it and giving it your own interpretation. And what they wanted was that every time you looked at a piece of art was that you left it knowing exactly what the story was. So the QR code had my voice and there was the story behind each image. I had 6 images in that exhibition. That ran from December to February. At the latter part of last year, I also secured a grant from the Arts Council England called Developing Your Creative Practice. And that grant allowed me to visit Florida, Jamaica and Ghana to photograph and document the stories of people who were born from the Windrush era who had gone to live in these places. So I was capturing their stories. And then in between that, the stories that you saw at Ebbsfleet International Station were part of another Kent project where I was commissioned to take photographs of the citizens, for the citizens, Ebbsfleet Citizens Archives. And the archives in Kent are growing and they want to document people who have newly arrivals. So the people that I photograph are people who had moved into Kent in the last 30 years, mainly black and brown people. And what it means is that the archives in Kent now has a more realistic reflection of the people who live in those areas. And up until then, that wasn't there. So I was quite honoured to have been part of that. And they also exhibited the images at Ebbsfleet International Station in June. So yeah, it's been a pretty busy year so far and a great one.
I mean, when you came in, I was like, you look like my mom. My mom is in the 60s and you look so trendy and beautiful. What has been one of your cherished beauty tips for women who are reaching their menopausal age? And I know you're a strong advocate for intermittent fasting.
Intermittent fasting, full fasting, diet, exercise, being around people that are positive, or being on your own, because people who are negative will drain you, and while they're draining themselves, they're going to take you with them. Not eating late at night, being mindful of how much time you spend in front of the screen, whether that's the laptop screen or the mobile screen. But yeah, small lifestyle things that you can consistently do, and that makes a difference to how you maintain your health and your well-being or your fitness, as Simon Sinek says.
And I like the phrase that being around with positive people. And I want to say a big thank you to my friend Tony. He reconnected us together. I mean, Tony has been very, very instrumental in the establishment of my channel, right from scratch. He's been a good friend, and I always say, when you have good friends around you that are willing to push you forward, it's so good. It's so good. And he got me these nice sneakers.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Tony. I mean, Mbeke, I know you've worked with reputable organizations like the United Nations, Channel 4 Television. What did you do there?
I was actually coaching one of their senior leaders.
Wow.
So I wear a professional hat as a coach. Often I coach people within education. I've coached people within the media sector as well. And coaching is one of those, I think it's almost like an unsung hero in terms of skill set, because having a coach, someone that you can have a professional conversation with, who you're accountable to, not somebody who's your friend, so that when you say, I didn't do it, they say, it doesn't matter, do it next week. A coach is someone you set clear targets with, you meet them, and you reflect on how they were met or not, but you have to stay within that professional setting. And so I was working professionally with Channel 4. Yes.
What legacy would you like to imbibe now and leave behind for this generation and beyond?
What legacy would I like to leave? I would like to leave a legacy that we have some simple things in life that have become complicated, and sometimes we need to return to the source, return to the simplicity of how we used to eat, the simplicity of how we used to spend time with each other. Not, when I'm in a room, one of the things that literally hurts my heart is to see 10 young people together all on the phone. None of them talking to each other.
Okay.
None of them connecting with each other. There is energy and joy within connecting with another human being. And it feels like a basic experience that we're losing. So I'd like to leave the legacy that we can return to those things, and it would do us a lot of good.
So Mbeke, I know you have authored some amazing books, not just one. The one that we just touched on was How to Live, Work and Thrive Abroad.
Yes.
And Exploring All of Me.
Yeah, poetry.
Time to Raise the Bar. Wow. I would love to read this book. Make the changes, feel the joy.
Yeah.
Congratulations on all your effort in sharing your knowledge and experience in all these wonderful books. Which one is your best? Which one do you prefer?
They're all different. They're all different. I think that How to Live, Work and Thrive Abroad is an important book. Because when I returned from working abroad in Malaysia in 2018, a lot of people were asking me, how do you do this? How do you do this? How do I, how can I work abroad? And I said to them, there's the practical side of getting a contract, signing the contract and going overseas. But actually, the emotional process of leaving everything and everyone that you've ever known and going to a country that you've never lived in and you don't know anyone is a very big step. And so you need to ask yourself, one, are you willing to do that? And two, if you are willing to do that, what will that mean for you? What will that mean for your relationships? What will that mean for the people that you know? Because it's a big, big step. And, a lot of people who work abroad know how big that step is and know how much they've had to give up to do that. And sometimes your relationships never recover, and sometimes they do, but it's not a small thing. Yeah, and my poetry is ongoing. I think that, there's poems that we can write about any and everything that happens in life. And my last poetry book, which was called Then It Was 2020, speaks for itself. In 2020, there were so many changes that were taking place in and around us. Some was clear, a lot of it was not clear. But in terms of creative expression, I had to have an outlet to just voice the confusion, the hypocrisy, the things that were happening that some of it made no sense. Some of it was a continuation of what else had been experienced in my life up to that point. But it was important to document it. Yeah.
Now let's delve in the area of racism. We are all Black people and the nuances that comes with it. How will you describe it then and what exists in present times? Me coming from Africa, I would say, I had not had much experience until coming into UK, and it's when I feel it.
Yes.
It's when you are outside Africa, you wouldn't feel that much of it. But when you are in the Western world, that is when you feel. How you describe it then and what is it now?
When you say then, Fiifi, do you mean when I was growing up versus
when you were
now?
growing,
So, we've recently had some race riots, race uprisings, backlash following the killing of those 3 children. May their souls and bodies rest in peace. And so, again, this country has been reminded of the racism that exists here. And racism generally for me, is built on fear. Racism is built on stereotypes. And some of the interviews that I've heard and listened to have just made me laugh. They've been ridiculous. And some of the rhetoric about people are taking our jobs and taking our homes. And, you know, thank goodness for platforms like TikTok, because you can see doctors and lawyers, people who have studied for 10 years to be able to hold professions, an NHS system that would not exist without so-called foreign workers, a transportation system that would not exist without foreign workers, the same workers that were like my parents when they were invited to rebuild this country after the Second World War. So the racism is here. It's usually not too low below the surface, but it has no sense. You know, it has no foundation, because the systems that are in play here, the systems that are working, would not exist without foreign workers, because the people in this country, a lot of them are not qualified. They don't have the skills. They're not qualified doctors. They're not qualified lawyers or barristers or any of the professions that the ex-colonies still pressure their children to become. So it is there. You know, I've had experience of overt racism. I've had experience of being called nigger when I was a student in Sussex. And the people who did it were cowards. They drove by in a car and shouted. And I was shocked that it happened. This is the 1980s. But I also laughed. I said, these people are not even brave.
Yeah, to stop.
They don't even stop. They're driving their car past. And so, you know, friends of mine have been reaching out, and they've emailed me and they've said, oh, really sorry, I hope you're okay. And I said, I'm fine. I'm fine, because I live in a country where racism exists. I have to be vigilant. And maybe for a period I felt a little bit more vigilant, but it's not something that's ever too far away. There's always a look or a glance or something within my daily experience. So I'm aware of it.
Okay. As a person, I really love to travel. I couldn't help but notice that you have had a fair share of adventure in visiting many countries. Can you share some memorable moments, be it Ghana, Cameroon, Malaysia, or Jamaica, that you can share with us?
Oh, gosh, yes. Memorable moments.
Just one.
Oh, there's many. I mean, a memorable moment was being in Bali for the first time.
Bali, okay.
When I worked in Malaysia, I traveled extensively in the Far East. I'd never been to Bali, and I can now, I've been there 4 or 5 times. A beautiful place. Ubud is a place that centers around yoga, healthy eating, lots and lots of activities in line with my own practices. So I love being there. Being on the beach in Jamaica with friends, eating jackfruit and just with our feet in the sea, enjoying the Caribbean sea, and just eating food with the sun on your head. Absolutely beautiful. Hiking in the forest in Malaysia with monitors this big. And as somebody that was raised in the city, I've learned not to be offended or affected by these things. But initially, I was shocked. There are lizards that are, this big, and they're just slithering around, and monkeys over your head, and you just get on with it with everybody else. In Cameroon has a whole range of amazing architecture that you would find in the depths of Cameroon, and finding out that Cameroon had been colonized by the French and the British, and just how different the places are. So if you go to Yaoundé in the north, it's like being in Paris. Little coffee shops, beautiful infrastructure, great roads. You go to the south, where we were in Mundemba, totally devastated. As soon as it rains, the roads disappear. Very, very different experience. Okay. So, yeah.
I know you love Africa, so I just want to know, how many people have you been able to reconnect back to Africa and their roots?
Oh, quite a few. Quite a few. Over the years, my coming and going has said to people, okay, I will try this. And then they've gone. Some people have stayed, which has been fantastic. Yeah. And The interesting thing about that question is that when you're living your life, you don't always know who you impact.
Yeah.
So before YouTube, before blogging, before all of these platforms available, I was going, sharing my photographs.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'd have them in exhibitions. And people would say to me, what's it like in Ghana?
Yeah.
Or what's it like in Cameroon? And I say, well, you should go and visit, because it's not what they show you on the TV.
Yeah.
You have to go. You have to experience the vastness of it, the variety. And, you know, I say this today, I say this to everyone, there's good and bad everywhere. Yeah. And, people have gone. Yeah. And so now that we have, you know, Instagram, you can go on Instagram and Ghana just looks like Hollywood all the time. Everybody's having such a great time. And even that is that's not true, because not everybody's having a great time in Ghana all the time. But there are good times there as well.
I mean, coming to this country, I've really appreciated my mom.
Yes.
Because she gave me the best that I could have.
Yes.
And I go like, thank you very much for she giving me so much.
Yes.
Looking back and even looking now as to how some people live with the small that they have, and my mom having those scarce resources and being able to make an impact in my life. I really thank her, and I'll go like, Africa is great. Yes, Africa is great. A lot of people should experience it for themselves rather than looking onto the TV, like how I was also looking on TV, seeing London as where there's no poverty.
And then you come here and you see it's different.
It's different.
Exactly.
Okay, Mbeke, what's the way forward for Mbeke before we end the interview?
The way forward for me is to continue to impact and influence those that I meet. Continue to show that life in the late 50s can be how you want it to be. You create it how you want it. Something as simple as, wearing your cloth, but wearing it in a way that's convenient for you. If you want to still wrap your head, you can wrap your head. You can wear your hair low. You can, you have the right to reinvent yourself. You don't have to be put into this cast that other people make for you. Yeah, when you look in the mirror, who is it that you want to show the world? You create that. You make that happen. It's in your hands.
Thank you very much, Mbeke, for appearing on Lifestyle with Fiifi. And I would like to throw more light about your books, if I can have them. I mean, where can we have? Where can we have?
So they're both available on Amazon, and also on the platform called Lulu. So if you type in Lulu and you type my name, my books will come up.
Okay, thank you very much, Mbeke, for joining us on set.
Thank you.
Guys, it's nice to be important, but very, very important to be nice. So we say thank you. Bye.